I'm going to talk about COPE in a single-family dwelling. Starting with the construction of the home, you should ask about the material makeup of the home. Most homes, as standard builds, are either brick or a combination of brick veneer and siding with a frame structure on top of a concrete block or a poured concrete foundation. You may, however, come across someone with a log cabin with a wooden foundation, which is a potential hazard for insect infestations, water damage, and most importantly, fire hazards. It probably would not be built to code either. As an underwriter, be mindful for such unique builds, which your insurer may not have a product for. Also in recent times, there seems to be a starting trend for people to convert transport carriers into modular homes, whereby the containers are connected side by side and stacked to frame the structure. As an underwriter, you should find out such things as the potential hazards that occur in these non-standard construction. Is corrosion an issue? How do you rebuild in the event of a fire? How would the insurer price the rebuild costs? It is also important to know how the home is heated. There are a variety of standard and non-standard types of heating, some riskier than others. The most common types of heating include natural gas, propane, electric baseboard, which statistically are safer forms of heat production. Then there are forms such as pellet, wood stoves, and oil tanks, which not only have higher fire risks, but also poses liability concerns for oil contamination, which can include high cleanup costs. So you must inquire about how these units were installed and how old the mechanisms are, since age of these devices are always a concern. You should also know how old the building is. Older homes contain drier materials which burn easier and more rapidly. On top of that, some older homes have hazardous electrical wiring such as old knob and tube from the early 1900s. This type of wiring can heat up and catch fire if the wiring isn't equipped to handle the loads of today's technologies. Also, some homes have aluminum wiring which can overheat and dislodge from contact points, arc, and cause a fire. So do ask about the wiring, including any modifications to the wiring. It is also important to know about plumbing materials. Today's standard plumbing materials are made up of polymer and/or copper plumbing, which abide by current codes. Some older homes may be constructed out of lead, galvanized, or polybutylene, which can corrode or break at a moment's notice, leading to several thousands of dollars of repair. You may encounter clients that plan to renovate or rebuild an old structure. This poses many liability concerns to not only the client and their family, but to neighboring properties and to contractors taking on the project. You should ask questions specifically regarding matters such as if the home is under construction or renovation. Is the contractor licensed and do they have their own workman's compensation? What is being completed? When will it be completed? Who is doing the work? We want to make sure it's being completed by professionals with their own liability insurance. Personal line insurers will not extend liability to contractors. Will the family remain in the home? Once again, this is a liability concern. Will the construction heighten risks for fire or water damage? What precautions are being made to prevent these concerns? Some homeowners' policies may void if a home is being under construction. So it is important to make sure the type of work being completed and the measures taken by the homeowner to make sure it will comply with the insurance's parameters. The underwriter should also find out what the new rebuild value is and update the policy accordingly. Now let's talk about occupancy. The number of people in a dwelling. How many people are living in a home? Standard single-family dwellings have 4 to 6 members, but some dwellings may be multi-generational homes, and some may have caregivers in the home, which can increase liability concerns for people walking in and out of the building. Now, the number of kitchens is also a concern because some multi-generational homes have 2 kitchens. Since most fires often start in kitchens, then the chance of a fire doubles with a multi-generational home. especially considering that some electrical panels in a two-kitchen home may not be equipped to handle the loads, causing wires to overheat and catch fire. For homes used as an investment property, be mindful for people on long or short-term leases. For a rental property, a long-term lease will draw a more stable, responsible tenant, as opposed to a short-term lease who is more likely to express the care nor the familiarity of the home, which increases liability concerns. Overall, there is always a greater risk when dealing with rental properties. Tenants in general are more careless than homeowners, and those careless acts could increase liability, fire, or water risks for a given property. It is also important to know who is responsible for the maintenance of the home. Things such as water leaks and electrical issues should be the responsibility of the owner or a professional third-party contractor, and never the tenant, which will significantly decrease the likelihood of these potentially property-damaging hazards from being addressed properly. Also, when talking to a client with a rental property, ask how often will they be visiting the property. Owner visits are important for many reasons. It will reduce the risk of grow-ops. With the presence of an owner entering the home, even with limited frequency, it will reduce the risk of such illegal activities occurring. Also, they can pick up the presence of high heat and humidity within a home, which can lead to mold, a common exclusion on a policy. There are significant liability concerns with grow-ops. Some insurers may not pay out liability claims caused by illegal activities, so putting the onus on the homeowner to understand the responsibilities pertaining to this area is important for an underwriter to express to the agent or the broker. But a vacant or an unoccupied dwelling. When a home is uninhabited, no one is present to experience the electrical concerns or see water leaks or other potential hazards within the home. That security is eliminated in a vacant or unoccupied home. An underwriter must investigate if the owner is taking proper measures for securing his property when it's in the state, and also to see if the insurer can even offer a product. Now, let's talk about protection. Protection or fire protection is broken down into two sections, public and private protection. Private protection for a residential home can refer to functioning fire alarms. On each level of a home, now there are alarms that are non-monitored, and then there are alarms that are connected to a professional monitoring service. This would be advisable or even mandatory if you have a client that leaves his residence for several weeks or months within a year. Also, things you should find out if there's a fire extinguisher, and if so, is it tested regularly? Now, with public protection, we look at two things: the distance between fire hydrants and fire stations. The standard distances between a home and a hydrant are less than 1,000 feet, and the distance between a home and a fire station should be less than 8 kilometers. But some homes in rural locations may not have a hydrant and or be within 8 kilometers of a station. If this is the case, it is important to know if there are other services such as a water shuttle or tanker service there for the client in the event of a fire. Now I want to talk about exposure. What types of hazards surround the residence you are insuring? Homes built very close to older dwellings could pose as greater fire risks. As the materials in an older home dries up, the risk of fire increases. Being closer to more older dwellings increases the chance of fire risks. If the residence is near a floodplain, as an underwriter, you should know what precautions were made by the client to prevent flooding to the home from occurring. Did they build on an elevated plane? Does the property have any special emergency drainage system involved? In all likelihood, as an underwriter, you may need to advise the client that flooding may be an exclusion on the policy so that they can make an informed decision on the product they are getting.